Hi, my name's Christine, and I want to help you hang or put on handles on your cabinets, furniture, whatever it is you want. It's all a matter of using the right techniques, the right kind of equipment, and you too can be successful in getting your cabinet handles in the proper place, level, properly put so that they're not wiggly or a problem for the future. As always, anytime you do a project, make sure you follow whatever safety rules are out there for whatever tools that you're using. So please be cautious with those. All right, let's get started. Let's talk about this. So right here, I'm going to be hanging a handle that is a 3-inch span, and that's something that you're going to have to be aware of, is what the distance is between the holes that you're going to be drilling. It depends on the hardware that you purchase. In this case, I'm going to do a vertical handle. As you can see, that's a bar. Now, something to keep in mind is you need to research where you want to put your hardware as far as the look that you want. There's not one rule. Hardware can be put, in this case, we're putting it here towards this corner. You could potentially go across here, here. It's all a design perspective and a functionality perspective. So that really depends on what you're preferring. And your jigs and your guides are made where you can actually adjust those things as you see fit. So taking a look here, what I decided was basically that I'd go an inch in, which kind of centers it. If you see this piece of wood here, I wanted to center it on this outer piece. But as far as this was concerned, this top part is not centered on this piece because I felt like it pushed it up too high. It just didn't seem correct or right. So I actually bumped it down by another 5/16 of an inch. So it's 1 inch and 5/16 down. So what you need to do is to gather all your equipment. And so in gathering all your equipment, it's certain things that you will need. Now, you might think that something simple like this, and this is not a bad tool per se, might be useful, but honestly, when you're doing something like your kitchen cabinets, where the handles are getting used a lot, getting pulled on, heavy weights, you want to make sure that you have them straight. And I don't mean just straight as in up and down straight, but also as you're drilling through the wood, that you don't drill in at an angle so that your handles are wiggly and move around and aren't correct. So that's why this tool isn't necessarily the most accurate for that kind of situation. It has holes and things like that. It might be good for a piece of furniture, but for kitchen cabinets, there's another tool that I prefer to use. So that brings me to what I think is a really necessary tool, and that's called the kreg jig. And if you take a look here, I'll explain to you some of the parts and pieces. Yes, it's a little bit of investment of money, but if you're going to be doing handles on kitchen cabinets, I think it's really important that you use. So you have these gray, and if you see there's some depth here to it, you have these gray, and they have encased in metal holes. This is where you're going to be drilling through. It's your guide. And the reason that they're thick is they're going to keep you square to the actual wood. And so that's important to make sure that you don't get all wonky with the holes so that your handles fit securely and nicely. Also on here is a scale, and what this does is these are adjustable. This will move up or down, so will this one, and you can have different centers. The center meaning there's a center or 3 inches between one hole and the other hole. And so that is marked on here. This is 3, and that's marked as 3 as well. I know you can't see it because it's blue on blue, but it is there. The next piece of this jig is, if you take a look here, you'll see this nice little bar here. Now this bar is adjustable. See the nice little turn knobs there? Basically what this does is this is a lip that holds this at a certain either distance in to the door or on top of the door or drawer front. And so basically you use this by adjusting, and there is measurements on the back side here. So I have this at 1 inch because that's what I want to do in here is 1 inch. That's what I sort of measure halfway. So I have that part ready, but there's some other things. So let's look at some other tools that are going to be necessary. Another thing is a square. Now you can get big squares like this. You can have a square like this, So basically, these tools are necessary to make sure that your guidelines are square with your door. That's the starting point to figure out how you're going to drill, how you're going to set your jig so that it's accurate and correct. Another tool is a clamp. Now, this is a regular kind of style clamp. However, I really recommend that you get, this is a Kreg brand clamp. It's made for the jig. And the reason it's so great, if you take a look at it, this has got a short area, it sticks out. This overlaps, and it will actually overlap the jig onto the door. And it clamps pretty tight, so it will hold it so it's not going to slide down. So these are all things that you need to consider. There's also an adjustment on this clamp where you can tighten the tension so that it's sort of an all-in-one motion type of thing, and it really is useful. A drill. You need a drill, obviously, and to go with it, a drill bit. Now the thing is, the Kreg manual tells you what size. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a bit that not only accommodates the parts that come to the back of the cabinet door, the screws, but you also want to make sure that you have a bit that goes through that jig and stays tight in that jig, so there's no wiggle room for you to drill at an odd angle. Now, this happens to be 4.5 millimeters, and again, you may already have some drill bits and not know. So one of these handy little measuring guides, if you go through the holes, too small, that just fits, then that's the size that it is. And that's what I did because I couldn't read this on this one, so that's how I determined that it was the correct size. And it does fit into the jig correctly with little wiggle room to do that. A pencil, of course, tape measure. And for some of us, reading glasses. So, and of course your handle and the screws. So let's take a look at getting started on this and what you need to do to actually make this happen. So the first thing I'm doing is I adjusted this for an inch, the guide for an inch. So what happens is it's an inch in. This little mark here at the top of the jig, that little arrow there will show you what you need to line up. Now, I already determined that an inch is correct, so I know that this is correct because on the back of this, I screw this in and it says an inch. So I already know that on both of these sides. So I'm good to go with that. So if I take a look there, that should be flush. It's tightened up, that's an inch in. But the next part of it is how high up. Now you probably see a line on there. That's because I pre-measured. Let's pretend I didn't do that. So what would I do to have that happen? I would look at this one as a guide because I want them all to match. And I've determined that it's an inch and 5/16. So if you take a look, I know it might be a little hard to see, but it's an inch and 5/16. And I measure that another point along the way. Now, this is too cumbersome to put this here and find the line within there. You need to draw the line out so you can see it out beyond the jig. Now, here's where it could get tricky. If you don't draw the line straight, if you don't draw it not just straight but square to the door, then you could have it where it's sticking out down here and you're totally wrong with what you're measuring. So you have to make sure that this is square and exactly where it should be. This is where a tool like this or that big square would work. Because what you're basically doing is you take your measurement there and you basically have this up against the door, and what it's doing is it's keeping it absolutely at a 90-degree angle, that line. So it's perpendicular to the edge of the door. And with respect to the door, it should be correct. So I do that because I've marked my 1 5/8, mark it there. Then I take my square and I run this along here out far enough that it's out beyond the jig itself. Say, that's where the fun comes in. Or is it? All right, so let's take a look here and I'll show you what's going on now. So now I have it the inch in, but now what I have to do is I want the first hole to be at this line. So if I take a look here, here's the 3, and on this bevel, I'll try to show you here, it's all in blue so it's hard to see. On that bevel, there are lines. So I look at the line that comes from that, and that's my guide up against this. So I'm looking, there's that line, and it's coming from here all the way there. So the next step is to make sure I'm holding everything. This is the fun part. Oh, I turned this up too high. All right, so I turned that up too high, the tension on that, so let me fix that now. And that happens sometimes. So let me do this. I'm gonna loosen it just a little bit. Let's try it again. Ooh, third time's a charm. All right, let's take a look here. Now, gotta make sure it's lined up, and it's not. So this and this line is not lined up, so I need to redo and probably readjust a little bit. Ooh, that's perfect tension. So sorry about that. Sometimes you just have to adjust and play with that. Once you get it adjusted, from there on out, it usually stays tight enough. All right, so at this time, I want to make sure that I'm in tight as I can. I'm up here, I'm right at the line. The next step is to put my bit in my drill. Drill. This is a little easier when you have another person, the jig and things like that, so just be aware. That does make it easier, but sometimes you're one woman or one person show, so. Sometimes be patient, let the drill do the work, just because the wood can be kind of hard and it just takes a little bit to sort of get through it. All right, so the second hole. All right, that one's done too. All right, so here comes the fun part. Do this. This is going to be tight, so. Okay. There we go, and as you can see, it's right at the line, drilled through, and right there, nice and even. And the next thing is to put our handle on. So there's usually 2 sets of screws. You just have to determine which one works. If you're going through drawer front, you want the longer set. If you're going through regular, you use the shorter set. So we go through here. Just getting started with this one. Okay, a nice little screwdriver. So we get that. And just like that, I have my other handle hung. Wasn't so bad once you get to know that using the jig and the clamp, some of those things, you're ready to go. All right, best of luck to you. I hope your handles turn out as nice as mine do, and enjoy.